Hello, welcome to Players in Exile. My name is Phil, and today I'd like to start taking you through a series of videos where I put together an EDH deck, going through each of the stages. So I'm going to look at lands today, then ramp, and then we'll look at things like draw and the main cards of the deck, etc. In this video, I'm building the deck around Meren of Clan Toth. Now, Meren is a Golgari commander, so we have both green and black, and we're going to look at the lands based on those color requirements. But if you're also running a two-color commander, you can almost swap each of the lands that I've got for equivalents in your color pairing. There may be a couple of differences, but there won't be many. And one of the takeaways I'd like you to have from watching this video is that lands are no longer expensive. We have a really good selection of two color lands now available to us at very, very reasonable price points in Commander. We don't have to go for $60 fetch lands unless we're playing competitive, or we want to be honest with you. We don't, you don't have to play those original jewels unless you really want to. And you don't even necessarily have to play shock lands unless you really want to. So let's have a look at what I've got selected here. So I've gone for 34 lands. You're probably going to want to look between 34 and 36, maybe a lot more if you're playing a land-based commander. So you're doing landfall, something along those lines. But with my Meren deck, I think the casting cost of most of the stuff in my deck is quite low. The bigger stuff I really want to cheat into play. We're going to start at the bottom, work our way up. So we start with Woodland Cemetery. So Woodland Cemetery enters the battlefield tapped unless you control a swamp or a forest. You don't want it necessarily to be the first land that you play, but provided you've got a basic land in play, it will be untapped and it'll tap for either black or green. Undergrowth Stadium, one of my favourite of the new lands is this cycle. Undergrowth Stadium enters the battlefield tapped unless you have two or more opponents. You're playing Commander, you're likely to be playing 3 or 4 people, or possibly even more. It will come into play untapped and tapped for black or green. Twilight Mire. Twilight Mire is a filter lands. Now the filter lands used to be really pricey, but they got a reprint, and so now they've come right down in price and they are accessible. It taps for colourless, and that can be a benefit. And you can either tap black or green into it, and you either get black, 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 green, or green, green out of it. Temple of Malady is the only land I've got here that I'm aware of that enters the battlefield tapped, of all the dual colour lands at least. And the reason I've included it is because of all the tap lands, the guild gates, etc., it is by far and away, the temples are by far and away the best because they let you scry. And that little addition of scry 1 is invaluable. So if you really do have to go to tap land, go find your particular temple and get that, basically. Tainted Wood, very simple, taps for colourless or taps for black or green and can activate only if I control a swamp. I've then got 9 swamps. I've got a Reliquary Tower. I put Reliquary Towers in all of my decks. I think they are a no-brainer, really. They tap for colourless, I know, which can possibly hinder you at the beginning of the game, but I'm not playing super competitive Magic. I'm playing sort of level 7s. Taps for colourless, you've got no maximum hand size. You never know when you might get a chance to draw lots of cards. Having a Reliquary Tower around is a great thing. Also, you never know when someone might play Ginger Taxus against you. Well, if they do, they're mean, but you never know. Overgrown Tomb. Overgrown Tomb enters the battlefield. You may play 2 live. If you don't, it enters the battlefield tapped. So that's your classic shock land. Nurturing Peatland. Pay 1 life, add black or green, and you can sack it to draw a card. Not that I probably ever would. Necroblossom Snarl. These are the absolute latest lands. Came out with Strixhaven. As Necroblossom Snarl enters the battlefield, you may reveal a swamp or a forest card from your hand. If you don't, Necroblossom Snarl enters the battlefield tapped. If I understand it rightly, you have to go back to Innistrad, I think, for the like colour pairings. But there is a set. There's all 10 available. You just may have to look around for the others because the Snarls are opposing colour pairings from Strixhaven, the colleges. Llanowar Wastes, add colourless or add black or green, and it deals 1 damage to you, much like the Talismans. High Market. Now, this is a utility land for me, and we are looking at Meren of Clan Toth. Now, Meren wants you to be able to sacrifice things to get them into the graveyard, to get your experience trigger on Meren, so you can bring things back. Having pretty much a free sacrifice on a land Forget the life gain. It's just literally tap, sacrifice a creature. That's really, really useful. Ghost Quarter is just another utility land I've put in here. You never know when you find yourself wanting to take out someone's Gaia's Cradle or Growing Rights of Islam. I can't remember what the actual land is actually called. Or yeah, any particularly strong land that you don't particularly want them to have. 9 forests, Dartboard Pathway. I saw online a little query from somebody saying that they didn't think that pathways were any good. And I don't understand why not. If you start with a pathway in your hand, if you were to start with 3 swamps and you needed green, you're pretty much screwed. But if you start with 2 swamps and a pathway and you need green, you flip it over. And we'll use the green pathway, Slitherboard pathway. So, although it doesn't tap for one black or for green, you have that choice in your hand. It's a great design mechanic, and I think they are invaluable. And I see a lot of people running them, and they are really cheap at the moment. And I suggest you go out and you get as many as you can for the colours that you're playing. Command Tower, of course, goes into every deck. Taps for any colour in your commander. I say it goes in every deck. I wouldn't put it in a monocolour deck, but anything more than 2 colours, 2 or more colours. Bajuka Bog, invaluable in a Meren deck. Exiles target player's graveyard. It's probably invaluable in any deck playing black, to be perfectly honest with you. And right at the very top, we've got Blooming Marsh. Blooming Marsh enters the battlefield tapped unless you control 2 or fewer other lands. Of all the lands there, it's probably the weakest because if you play it later in the game, it will come into play tapped. But if you get it in your opening hand, you can get it out relatively easily and it will be untapped. And as you can see, nearly every land I showed you there, bar 1, will enter the battlefield untapped in the early game, will give you plenty of mana options, and they're $7 according to this, or $6.50. The Dartboard Pathway, $7, $4 depending on which price point you're using down here. None of these lands are particularly expensive. Sorry, that was a bit of a faster dive down there. This is $7, $7. The Temple of Malady, because it comes into play tapped, is down in the 40-cent range. Tainted Wood, I think is great value for what it does. You're likely to be able to play a Swamp early doors. I think the most expensive one I've got in there is Overgrown Tomb, and that's $12 to $15, $16. Nurturing Peatland can be a little bit expensive. The Snarls are still fairly cheap. Land or Waste, very cheap. Don't. If you're willing to play a Talisman, or if you're willing to play any land that does damage to you to tap for mana, and in Commander we have 40 life, so I don't see why not use them. High Market, obviously, we've talked about that. So there you go. Very brief, very quick little look at the sort of lands I'm choosing. And I can't emphasize enough that you can run a 2-color deck. You can probably run a 3-color deck on a reasonable budget with a very good selection of lands in your deck without having to blow the bank. Thank you for watching Players in Exile. Join me next time when I look at Meren's ramp options, and don't forget to like and subscribe to this video.